Thank you very much. It's quite a pleasure to be here, and I have to admit that I expected much smaller group, smaller audience, to be honest. So in any case, I would like to present you some thoughts and some perspectives from the view of somebody who started with study of a rock club for his PhD and somehow remained attached to these kind of issues since then. So somehow it will be something I'm doing quite often, I mean, giving these kind of presentations. But this time I decided to give a small provocation to the title because it is still a radical anthropology group, saying that I find these issues related to music practices, to music venues, and especially to youth music venues, I will present in more details later, as the most important for not only me, but society of the present, and for the future, I hope as well. There are some practices going on which we might relate to several ideas of communism, which is basically a very simple idea. The idea is namely, give whatever you can and get whatever you need. And this is what actually communism is about. So, what I will touch in this presentation is it will be more youth-oriented than music venues themselves, because I was attached to a project I will explain later, more related to youth-oriented practices in music venues than just music venues in general. But still, music will be a kind of a fil rouge, or somehow basic level of something I would present. Then, of course, I will touch society in general, but through music practices. And somehow I will speak about reality, or realities, in, I hope, a bit specific way. So I was asked to present some music in the lecture, although for a while I thought it will not be necessary, just to show you two examples from music which is not related to places I will present you later, but to see the power of music at specific occasions. I will show you a clip of something that was an official state celebration of peasant revolt in the 16th century. So the President of the Republic was asked to join the public, and now what happened? I don't know how to make it louder, because So our president is a bit of a strange person. Yesterday, for example, he was invited to talk about hate speech, claiming that hate speech is not a problem at all in Slovenia. At the same time, we have got from the Council of Europe warning that our country should do something against it. So this is the guy. But what is important is not only singing. The singers were attached to one local club in Tolmin, the place where it happened. And very close to Tolmin, I will give you another music example for the beginning. There is, from the same celebration actually, there is a small village, a very small village in the hills, in which a very interesting alternative music festival was organized 15 years ago, and a couple of bands would play, and now one of the members of those bands would sing this one.
Poznaste veste da sem kmet pašten, da noč se rad nalažem, mandem delat ni problem. Učil sam me, da je lena pazla velik smrten grih, da ja prekrasna smješče tudi leži na tajih tlih. Ma zdaj sa taki cajti, da je skozi večer di, da živi na naš račun, on dela in smrdi. Sedije v pisarnah, kan se dneve tukta je, kako on z nas naredil, še mala več virje veže. Banda kravatarska, noben model cena dan. Usile pošte diraje, kako nas bolj nalaže je, da patre na kanckancev naš čimpala krade je. Sem mlad v... Ni bilo duha cajta, živu, kada vseha Bog namil, a sami lepe pjesnice vesele sem si pil. Ma ni bilo duha cajta, kaj je paš hudič kravata, trikrat več kar mi je dal, je Jezus skozi vrata. Banda kravatarska, noben modela cena dan. Usile pošte diraje, kako nas bolj nalaže je, da patre na kanckancev naš čimbala krade je. Včasih je...
So the face of the president was not so nice anymore, not happy. This was the moment I was waiting. Actually, the lyrics of these songs are speaking about European bureaucracy, and their aim to help, especially to the peasants. But the peasants very well know that, well, if they get something, they will have to give a lot at the same time. So the main line of the rhyme is the gang in ties or coming to peasants taking, of course, more than bringing with them. And this gang in ties is obviously, of course, not only for bureaucrats, but all those people who use these ties as an emblem of their social status. And as a matter of fact, this guy is actually a peasant. He is indeed a peasant. He doesn't just play about it, having a kind of, how to say it, organic farm in the hills. So he's not joking about these issues. So these were two examples about music that I find attractive and interesting, but this is not style of music I would otherwise present, and somehow the music which would be a part of this reality I will speak about in my presentation. So I hope we are still here. Yes, I don't know if we will remain here. So music is more or less always aimed to something that is coming, something that is in the future. Since Plato's analysis of music, we know it, although we usually rely on music with traditions and with some kind of social or social security, with security in social sense. So my path was from these studies of rock and youth club in a village in another part of Slovenia, up to something I concluded in 2011-2012 together with people from those clubs and venues. It was an analysis of the development of this non-governmental field. Two monographs were published, one mine and one collaborative, especially this one on solid ground is important. And I will show you later Marko Brecelj, who is one of the oldest guys in Slovenian radical underground music scene. He's leading the foundation for non-governmental youth field called Pohorski Battalion, which is a battalion of partisan fighters during the Second World War in the region of Slovenia which was annexed to the Third Reich. And it was one of the rare situations in occupied Europe when this partisan rebellion started at all, 50 kilometers from Graz. And they were killed in 1942, all, including children who were part of the group. So this is an idea that, yes, you have to fight, even if your fight is condemned to failure or temporary failure. The same as with communism and idea of communism itself. And these spaces I will try to present, not in so many details as I would do otherwise, are important in showing places in social reality which are somehow trying to move out from forces of, or whatever, how to say, forces of capital and authority. So neither state nor capital is what we have here. So I see these underground music venues, these kind of free territories, somehow stemming, or what is the term, just pushing out from pressure of this neoliberal state and capital. And I see them as commons of the present, and I will conclude my presentation with mentioning of commons again. Somehow these places are unpredictably, or people who are inhabited these places are creative, are different, again stemming out from the norms. And I think this is the ultimate importance of such venues, for me at least, and for them. So I will touch two issues of communism as an idea, as I started at the beginning, which is definitely part of what is going on in such venues. Of course, we find such venues all around the world. But people who are involved in activities are frustrated because they can't survive with money earned in those venues and with outside forces that are constantly somehow crashing them down. I will follow at one hand economic perspective of this idea, and on the other hand philosophical of idea of communism. You might better know this quite important work by David Graeber on debt, and three main moral principles of economic relations: communism, exchange, and hierarchy, as he somehow put them forward. Communism is a very simple principle I mentioned before, just you give and you take whatever you can and whatever you need, but you do not measure. This is extremely important. You never measure what you give and what you take. If you measure it, you come into exchange. This is what Marcel Mauss was describing as the basis of reciprocity, later by Levi-Strauss. And from this exchange, in which we can never be even, although we pretend of being even, in Kula Ring you are never even, although it is constantly moving around, those variables, hierarchies are being established, and the most successful hierarchy we have is free market, which is established by force. So if we go to history of urban life in Europe, we know that the moment when a small borough or a village was accredited to the right to have a market, then it became the town. Or a bit later, this is a borough in between. So the first right of market is this transformation from rural up to urban civilization, but it is authority that gives market rights. It is not something naturally given, as we somehow presume nowadays, that free market economy is something given and just natural. It's not. It's always put forward by force. This is still Graeber's analysis I'm following here. So in economic sense, things are quite clear. The point is that we always overlook the very basis of our relations, which is when we do not count, when we do not measure, we can freely, actually, how to say it, lead communist way. And everybody does it without knowing, fortunately. And the other perspective is by Alain Badiou and his well-known the communist hypothesis. His idea is he is a very well-known, maybe one of the latest big French philosophers of the time, who would write not so long ago, I think it was approximately 10 years ago, about the idea of communism, which is still worth of sustaining. He would compare it with Fermat's idea from mathematics in finding the proof of relationship of pure numbers if you do it a on n plus b on n is something on n. Stands that it is solvable only for one. I don't know which number it is.
1 and 2.
1 and 2, I think it is. Thank you very much. I don't know it by heart, I have to admit. But nevertheless, for 300 years, mathematicians were fighting to prove that his idea was correct or not. And finally, the proof came a couple of years ago, which was quite a kind of an event in mathematics. So he would compare these with communism. We have an idea of communism, of course. We have an idea of universal, free society with respect of every individual without a force from above. But of course it doesn't work in practice. And we don't know how it may work in practice. But still an idea is here and we have to fight for it. This is again Alain Badiou's ideas, to preserve it for future, not only future generations, but future in which sooner or later it will become reality. I have no doubts about it, because otherwise we will get lost, or we will live in communism, or we will not survive at all. This is a kind of Marxian perspective of it. He would say we would be barbarians if not communists. But
were you referring to Fermat's last theorem by any chance?
yeah, Fermat's
last year.
yeah.
Okay. Right.
But this was Alain Badiou who did it. And I was just reproducing his ideas. Otherwise, my knowledge of mathematics is a bit old, unfortunately. But I know what it was. I knew what it was about. So we need this universal idea of freedom, equality, and rights. And here at the beginning we can see that, of course, the present day liberal, neoliberal, or whatever, defending of human rights, our president is a typical example of somebody who is just saying that the right of freedom of speech is limitless. So hate speech is not a problem. Is a problem. And we are facing these problems throughout our time. So the idea, the perspective should be somehow sustained. And I hope we can at least believe in these philosophical aspects of it, if not practical. But in practical life, we have many situations in which we can find these ideas in practice. So I will just now jump into empirical material, which is again more related to specific youth-oriented music clubs and venues than music venues in general. But of course, in one part of it, underground music venues and youth music venues would collide, would be the same. And this perhaps the most important. The former, very complicated name, it has a youth, cultural, social, multimedia, multi-generational, it is not even mentioned, center in Koper, coastal town in Slovenia, established in 1990 and evicted in 2015, not so long ago. Defined this as a web of activities of the youth and for the youth. Very simple definition and workable definition. So a web of activities of the youth and for the youth. That means it is transgenerational in its essence. And it is a kind of sustainable. After its eviction from the place which was publicly owned by municipality of Koper, it is now located in private small shop, but there is no music venue, of course, because it is 1/4 of this room altogether. It may only have some public events done, and people are forming these webs, and this is, of course, when anthropologists jump into people who matter, not buildings, established institutions, or other kinds of associations. So during the project I was mentioning before, we had kind of tried to define, I'm trying to check if I have a map of Slovenia here, but I obviously skipped it already. So we defined many different venues, from public institutions established by local municipalities or authorities, small venues or concert places who are non-governmental. We have even some Catholic non-governmental youth centers or clubs, private organizations with concert venue or without venues, and informal youth venues, and of course finally squats. Squats themselves seem to be the most interesting when we are speaking about sharing and about establishing something essentially different and essentially new. Here it will be. I didn't know if it is immediately or not. So this was the research done in 2011 with this group of people. This is a joint monograph. So, for example, in anthropology, it is very intriguing how to invite people you study to become part of your ethnographies, not only in making ethnography, but in writing it after that. So they would write about other venues in Slovenia, and of course I would edit this stuff later to be published in the book. But they did writing, and they did ethnography, although it was not this kind of ethnography we usually consider as anthropological ethnography. It was just visiting and attending some concerts and writing about. I don't know if you know at all what is Slovenia. Where is it?
Most of us don't, I'm sure.
It was, so it is one of the countries stemming from former Yugoslavia. It was the northernmost country in Yugoslavia, and it is well located with Italy in the west, Austria in the north, Hungary in the east, and Croatia in the south nowadays. So if nothing else works, when I'm asked, where is Slovenia? Well, people usually don't ask, they simply pretend they know. I say, well, it is 2 hours drive to Venice. Okay, fine. Then they are shocked, of course, usually. But nevertheless, it is a very small country. We have only 2 million population, and the largest town is Ljubljana, here somewhere. With less than, around 300,000 population. So in this country, we have a variety of options in having these kind of independent underground venues. As you can see, these were spread all around the country, but we didn't, of course, study them all. We have approximately 30, maybe up to 40 such places, but we studied only 16 or 17 of them. What is important is that in the western part of Slovenia there are more than in central part of Slovenia. There is kind of an emptiness. The only empty place should have been here, because we have high Alps here. But there are some places even in these valleys, the Stolmin, Železniki, and what is another one, Smak in Cerkno. We have a couple of squats in Ljubljana, and we have some in small towns. And I will present you later only two, just because I will not use map anymore. It will be the most eastern one, which is a squat in small town Beltince, and this one here, which is called Mknj in Slovenian. But before I will go to these places, I have to present you kind of tricky issues related to youth policies of the time, both European and local Slovenian. And one of the acts which was accepted in the parliament without a single voice against, that means unanimously, was the act of youth work. Is it the next slide, I guess? Yes, it is this act on the public interest in youth sector. I thought it would be put on the top. I don't know if you see these titles at all. I didn't know which kind of presentation it will be. So it was act on the public interest in youth sector, accepted in 2010. So unanimously, they would define these youth centers as places for youth and so on. What is important is they advise, provide information and informal and non-formal learning, organize mobility of the youth, assist in volunteering, active citizenship, research of the youth people. They provide local activities in the interest of the local youth. So, somehow, bureaucratic language, of course. What is omitted? Something I would call anthropological constants are left out. Culture. Cultural creativity is completely omitted from the definition of what youth should do in these centers. Spare time, leisure, I don't know if I pronounced it right.
It's the American pronunciation.
Autonomy. And space is mentioned, but not necessarily a venue for public events would be a part of youth center. So what it is about, and how can it be? Just a moment. Yes, I didn't put the one I intended to actually, because I didn't know how much time I will have. Yes, I will show you some pictures later. Don't worry about it. It will come on time. The point is somehow that 89% or 85% of all younger people who would be asked about what they are doing mostly in their spare time would mention listening to music, going to concerts, or even playing music. But in these acts, music is almost not mentioned at all. So how it can be? How is it possible that we have such a gap between so-called, I like this one, this term, just go back to this one, active citizenship. I really like this one, because I will show you what it looks like. So all these categories are not put into. So this is the reason why if authorities would start to establish these places, they are organized different ways. So we have, at one hand, non-hierarchical, this is important, non-hierarchical organized venues, especially in squats And in the vast majority of those venues that were established from below, we call them grassroots venues. And although loosely organized but hierarchical organization in well-established places or well-established organizations, no matter if it is profit, non-profit organization at all. And we have on one hand solidarity, which goes quite well, activism versus a kind of professionalism and again active citizenship. And of course we have rebellious attitudes preserved versus opportunistic. And for me, going through all these places, when I did this research 7 years ago, I felt like a human being exactly in those on the left. And a kind of consumer in others, quite sterile. So this is a picture from one of those venues, and this is the yard of this venue in, I mentioned before, in Beltinci, borough or big village in eastern Slovenia. You won't see many murals with marks and other insignia in Slovenia nowadays because we got rid of communism, of course, in 1991. But here, this attitude is preserved. Why? Because it is different. We have, of course, many private bars and other venues, cafeteria, clubs, pubs, and so on, public and some, but not many, private music halls, specialized venues. But still, what is important are these common spaces of experiment in which we have spots. So now let's go to Ilirska Bistrica firstly. It is MKNŽ, Mladinski klub Nade Žagar, just to say a couple of words in Slovenian. This is a survival of a former socialist youth club. It was actually established in 1966, and it still holds the name of a partisan rebel, a female partisan fighter, Nada Žagar. So it was established in 1966, and in past 20 years it became quite well known across the globe, especially in one very specific stream of let's say alternative punk rock or some kinds of punk rock groups from the world. So it was a kind of a question, when you will be invited to Ilirska Bistrica to play. When you were invited to Ilirska Bistrica, then you would be a member of this specific stream of music. So it was not just local in any way. So this is a picture from 1966 at the introductory establishment of the place. And this is a picture of a guy I mentioned before who made a call to me and said, Rajko, will you write about us? It's Marko Bricelj, now approaching his 70s and still active in alternative music. And this is a celebration of 50th anniversary of this rock underground youth club in Ilirska Bistrica. It was 2 years ago, and it seems they will survive. Although nobody knows what will happen to the Sokolski Dom. This is a place which is by chance part of Slovenian Olympic Committee. It used to be a kind of gymnastic hall in the past. So nobody knows if the place will still be there in next 50 years. But they are doing their job still. The other one I was mentioning before is Ambasada Štefana Kovača Marka Beltinci. Again, I have to use Slovenian name, Embassy of Štefan Kovač Marko. This is another war hero from the Second World War, another partisan, but from eastern part of Slovenia, who was executed because of his rebellion and later became a national hero. The story about this place is a bit different. It was only partly squatted. They did have a kind of an agreement with local mayor to give them a place for activities. Usually they would need place for rehearsal of music groups, if you have a music group, you need a place of rehearsal, and it is not so easy to find it. And of course, we still are not so, let's say, advanced in these post-socialist societies to have venue, to have an idea that you have to rent a venue and pay for it. We still try to find place for free, which would be public place for free. So if you don't get it, then you simply occupy it. And there was a kind of a misunderstanding between the mayor and the group. And when finally they've got a key, they simply change the lock, and it is occupied since then. So officially it is squat, but unofficially it is, let's say, a grid squat. They established, God bless, this mass production of music, and I will play you some music. I don't know which one. It will be not this one. This will be the one, yes. One of the youngest groups from this of Slovenia. This is just rock Okay, let's return back because I only have 5 minutes left. Is it?
You've probably got 6.
No,
No, sorry.
Not
No,
much.
10 minutes then.
The most exciting band is post-rock band Stefan Kovač Marko Banda. So these are some pictures of this place. So this is the lock I'm speaking about, but of course the entrance is now from the other side of the building. And this is how it looks inside during the day when I did my part of field work in 2011. And that's it. Now a bit of theory again about the everyday. Well, I don't know, when I'm studying musicians, music, and especially these kind of places, I never know what is the most important for people. Is the everyday reality something they do to be, having jobs or any other kind of activities to survive during the day? Is this everyday reality just a backup to be able to buy music and to go to concerts? Or is it vice versa? They are attending music concerts simply to survive enough to be able to just go through the everyday. But what is important is that we don't have a good idea of the everyday, especially in modern societies. We do not have enough ethnographies of the everyday in the present, and I'm just touching some parts of this everyday in the present. Using some of Bourdieu's ideas, but especially Lefebvre, with his ideas of rhythms of everyday life, which are just a sketch put forward. That means practices, representations, and practices and representations of space. The final point of my lecture is very simple. Where is communism here? I showed you that relations or relationships established in these kind of venues, which are either occupied or made from grassroots made, are non-hierarchical. And they are following specific values. I will not read them all, you can read them because they're very large fonts. But what is important is here, people do work. People actually do a lot of work to sustain what they like. And they don't count working hours. They simply do. Sometimes they would work as hell. If they organize, for example, a festival, they can work almost 20 hours per day, and they would never count working hours in this. It is not labor. It's definitely not labor. So they work in the sake of the common good, something common. I'm idealizing it, don't misunderstand me. I am willingly idealizing it. I have to. So you have work versus a kind of volunteering, which is official active citizenship. It is not volunteering in that way, it is just work. Doing something good. So you have here a quote by somebody who used to work many different things, exit for a while, and then returning back to the place. It is in Chernobyl, in southern Slovenia, which was not part of our study, because they already did. So this is what I faced in one of those places in 2011. I don't know if picture is bright enough, but you can see a mess, a horrible mess. This is what they were facing, and they had to clean this mess up and to do something from it. It was a barrack at the train station in Kran, which is now well-established center, owned finally by these people communally, by the association. Still named squat, although it is not squat anymore. So I see these issues in relations of quite old stuff. Oikos versus polis. That means if you do something for yourself in your own private economy, you're an idiot. This is ancient Greek terminology of idiotism. If you do something for the people, you are part of the polis. And then this is how we have this difference between oikomona and cosmos. And there is a small but very important distinction between living world idea of Lebenswelt, which is just something given, and being here designed by Heidegger, in which you have an active role, much more active role than in Husserl's approach. Although it is not so easy as I present it here. Again, I am idealizing and simplifying willingly. And then we have a question, which is a basic question. Will we support creativity, not only in these venues? In these venues, obviously, we have creativity, although some music is seemingly not exactly non-destructive music, especially more radical versions of it. But this creativity itself as a process is something I find extremely important. So I will conclude my presentation even a minute before than I expected with some lines I still think should be considered as important in coping with reality of the present. My idea, when I entered anthropology or ethnology, we use both terms in Slovenian, in Central Europe. Ethnology is derived from folklore-oriented studies of the past and peasant communities in Europe or in your own land, and we somehow transformed this heritage into something we call cultural anthropology, mostly in Eastern Europe, not social anthropology, because it was already occupied by sociology, not by ethnology. This is the only reason why we have cultural anthropology in Eastern Europe, not social anthropology. But nevertheless, when I was facing a question what I will do for not only for my PhD, but what will be the orientation, what is the most important things you have to study, I realized that we definitely and desperately need studies of the present and these issues which are usually part of so-called cultural studies, the present-day life, anthropological way, if only possible. And in these 30 years, I am doing this kind, almost 30, 25 years, I'm doing this kind of stuff. I'm even more convinced nowadays that anthropologists should study the present society, not necessarily making distinctions between studying of the other and your own society. In the discussion I can say something about it if you will be interested to hear. But what I find extremely important is exactly where I did not, definitely not searching for something valuable for something socially valuable for the future, there was, and this is commons. So new commons, all battles these guys are fighting are actually production of new commons. And these new commons are extremely important value for the future, and I always conclude my presentations with this. It is this polis, anti-idiotic stance, non-private, external, public activity, which transfers trust among them into hope. And as long as they do not count working hours, things they give and things they get from this, it works as communist activities without them knowing it, without us knowing it, but it is there. And it's important.
Very good.